It's amazing to see you guys in Zoom land, which is obviously the new way of living. But just want to say thanks to Summer and Unsolicited Press. This has been quite an amazing journey. You guys are an amazing press. You've been phenomenal with from start to finish. I just have to say thank you for everything you've done to bring our books to life. So I'm happy to share the stage with Rosalia tonight. I'm excited to share my readings. So I'll give you just a quick little tidbit about it. So Summer mentioned it's about families, mothers, daughters, sons. There's also this section about others, which is kind of like not the typical family unit you might think of, but maybe groups of people that consider themselves a family or lovers or friends. And I think those are also considered families, and they also have their dysfunctions. So I'm going to read tonight from the section called Others, and I'll just give you a little bit of a background on the characters and to set the stage. So the story is called The Big Night, and it's kind of an appropriate a story to read right now because it's about the holidays. It's actually about Christmas time. We know that the holidays are coming up. The holidays are chaotic. And so the main characters of this story, you're going to have to suspend your belief for a little bit, but one of them is an elf and the other is a reindeer. And I think, Joe, you might remember this story. This is what I brought to Tin House back in like a million years ago as the story that I brought to Steve Allman. And so this is it. So you have to remind yourself that this is Blitzen the reindeer and an elf named Harv, and they are part of a celebrity rehab. It's a reality TV show. So here goes. This is The Big Night. Dr. Adam Flores opens group session with his standard line. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's sweet and sour time. Everyone goes around the circle and says a positive thing about him or herself, then a negative thing. The sour builds like little snowflakes until there's a snowball of sorrow rolling around the group. That's how the producers like it. They encourage any and all emotional outbursts. Crying is key. What about you, Blitzen? Dr. Flores says. The cameras swarm toward Blitzen, his head turbaned with bandages, antlers chipped, a patch over his eye. I guess I'm pretty funny, Blitzen says. That's good. Flores jots a note. I think you are too. The bad thing is, I don't know when to stop. Meaning, Flores says, well, the first time I did the powder, it was like, wowza. It shot right to my brain, made me want to like snort the whole bag. Good thing we didn't have it all the time. Harv, you're nodding. Care to add something? Flores says. And just by the way, this is rated R. So if you have children in the background, just be aware. The cameras turn to Harv. He stretches his still intact neck side to side. His fractured left arm is slung close to his chest, and his casted left shin is raised up in the elf-sized wheelchair. It's only been 3 weeks since he and Blitzen fell from the sky over Norway, coked up and on the run, the sleigh plummeting from the heavens. We didn't have steady access to what you guys have down here, Harv says. We went bananas for things like cigarettes, let alone the hard stuff. Claus controlled everything. He was the biggest fiend of all. Exactly, Blitzen says. But it was Claus who created your addictive behaviors. Flores taps his clipboard. I used to blame my mother. Jana Tanner chews a cuticle. The cameras swing to her. Elaborate. Flores shifts toward Jana's bleach blonde hair and freckled face. She took me everywhere, to all my auditions and stuff. And then when I started making it, she locked me down. That's when I went wild. Was she trying to hurt you? Flores says. She was trying to help me. She wanted to protect me. Jana cries. A producer off camera gives her a thumbs up, and Jana really lets it go. Cry it out, girl, cry it out. T-Wayne Twain smooths the back of her pink terry cloth tube top. The cameras shift to Twain. Do you hear this, guys? Flores leans forward. The cameras zoom in on his Clark Kent face. Jana's saying her mother wanted to help. Would you say Claus was trying to help you? Hell no, Harv says. He had everyone brainwashed, believing the whole fairy tale bullshit. Those of us who didn't buy it wanted out. Talk about the fairy tale bullshit, as you call it. Flores poses. NP's a corporation, plain and simple, Harv says. We weren't carrying on any traditions. We were making him rich. Those workshop elves, Blitzen says, worst working conditions on the planet. Harv here is lucky he was a stable elf, right, Harv? Harv nods, closes his eyes, trying to summon the tears. Off camera, a producer cues Harv to look at his mobile. My Uber's here. Harv rolls his wheelchair to the door, hobbles up onto his feet, then grabs the small crutches. A camera follows. I have to get out of here. Cue Blitzen. Harv, don't go, Blitzen says. Stay, dog, T. Wayne says. Just let him go, Dr. Flores says. Let him have some space. Once inside of the car, a silver Elantra, Harv recognizes the driver. It's Kaz from the Uber Chronicles. This too is choreographed, damn it. Just like when the producers gave Blitzen an 8-ball to tempt Harv last week, it could make sense that the only way Babes in Toyland could go on is if the stars keep relapsing. And here they go again, waving this driver in front of him. They know Harv's talked about her, how he wouldn't mind meeting a woman like her someday. He just didn't know that someday would be tonight. Hey, I know you, Kaz says. You're Harv from, yeah, he says, let's just go. Where are you headed? I don't know, Tijuana, the airport? What airline? Kaz pulls away. Virgin? I didn't know there were any more virgins left, she says, waiting for a laugh. In the world, I mean. Funny, he says. Just take me to the train station. There's a lot of stairs. You sure you can get up and down with those crutches? I'll manage. So you're running away? Yeah, this is the part where I'm supposed to do that. Their eyes meet in the rear view, and Harv gets that funny feeling, the one that's begun to plague him now that his head is clearing. The feeling that detects real things. It seems down here in the tropics, everyone stresses over what's real or fake. When the real stares back at you, you want to grab it and keep it. He's also a little starstruck, seeing her this close. You can't run away, Kaz says. Why not? People want you to get better. They're cheering for you. You got problems too, Harv says. I've seen your driving confessionals. Oh yeah, I know I do. I'm a hot mess. But I'd like to talk it out. It's the only way to heal. Alone, Harv says. With friends, she signals, then turns. That's all anybody needs. Harv exhales, shakes his head, looking out the window. The neighborhood still sparkles in holiday lights. I had a lot of friends up north, he says. Are you going to miss them, Kaz says. I don't know, maybe not. So make new ones, she says, and enjoy what you've got. Looks like they freed you pretty well. On-demand smoothies and that sushi machine? Wow. It won't last, he says. It never does. She turns right again. That's the beauty of it. Kaz slows the Elantra and stops in front of the 3-story Bel Air bungalow. Wait, why are we here? I brought you back. I don't want to be here. They're not my friends. You have Blitzen, she says, but he's a bad influence. Lift him up. You're a lot better than Dr. Flores, he says. He's always telling us to have faith. Faith is for fools. It has been and always will be about people. But before you can help others, she says, I know, your famous line. Then you say something about taking care of the most important things, mind, body, and spirit. Then you laugh and say, and not necessarily in that order, right? I've got a fan. Her eyes brighten in the rearview mirror. Here, let me help you out. On the curb, Harv looks up at her. She's not a Jana Tanner or the reincarnation of celebrity sisters who keep appearing every generation. Those kinds of women are fading, like supernova. Kaz is a normal woman, skin and bones, aging to perfection, everything real. So, are we friends, he says? She rests a hand on his shoulder. Whenever you need me. The funny feeling comes back. Those cameras will go away one day. He just knows it. Back inside the house, Harv shuffles into the confessional at the end of the hallway. All the celebrity suite doors with the comedy and tragedy masks on them are closed. Everyone is either in bed alone or in bed with each other. That or they're all on the rooftop deck in the hot tub, shattering themselves. Most likely that. Before he plops down into the easy chair, Harv turns off the camera in the confessional. He's pretty sure no one else in the house does that. Attention whores, all of them. The glow-in-the-dark paint splattered on the black walls makes it feel, just for a jiffy, like the big night, when that once-a-year anticipation of taking to the skies was all the dope he needed. For years, Harv believed in his tiny heart that only possibility lay ahead. Especially on those nights in the sleigh, piloting the ship alone because Santa Claus was wasted. Harv lived for the slice of cold wind on his face, infinity expanding before him. But the reality of living forever began to eat at him. It grew dark and ominous, and as seasons turned each year, he tried to kill it with whatever poison he could find. Escape was the only way out. The aches are subsiding and the fog lifting. He can stick with the regimen. He'll kick his habits and get out of this contract. He'll find himself a place to live, adapt to all this heat, and finally age like a human. Everyone back at NP, now cubicled, will go on processing orders into eternity. Free shipping through November, Gray Thursday, the new Christmas. In the miniature universe above him, Harv tries to find anything resembling a constellation. He had memorized almost all in both hemispheres, even when he was loaded, but can't find a single one now. He closes his eyes and breathes. The transcendental meditation has helped, though it takes a long time to get into it. His mind is still so quick, so distracted. He reaches for his phone, can't meditate when he's thinking of Kaz. It may all been a show to build the drama, as the producers say, but damn, it was the closest thing to hope he'd felt in a long time. The tap of hooves in the hallway pulls him away from waking the phone. Antlers scrape against the confessional door. Hey, Harv, open up, it's me. 4 beeps followed by the error tone reassures Harv. The best thing about the confessional is that no one else's code will work when someone's inside. Go away, Blitz. Yo, you have to come up to the deck. Things are getting crazy. I have a little treat for you too. No, please. Harv breathes. Faith, forget it. He taps his phone. The screen lights up his face in the tiny dark room. Come on, Blitzen says. Stay away from them and go to bed. The hooves back away from the door. Harv opens his Uber app and types Virgin Airlines into the where to field. Hey, Blitz, Harv says. I'll see you tomorrow, okay? Go get some rest. Harv stares at the screen. Dozens of little cars move around near the pulsing needle of his location. They turn and scoot backward and forward. She's out there somewhere. He wonders which one is her, and if he was to press request, would she come back to the mansion? Could they make it happen without the producers? Faith. He breathes. No, not faith. Mind, body, spirit, spirit, mind, body, body, spirit, mind. Good night, Harvey, Blitzen says. The hooves shuffle down the hallway. A door opens, then closes behind them. Blitzen is back in his stall, just like the old days, when Harv used to put each of the reindeer to bed. Seems like just yesterday they were so small, fuzzy, and sweet. Their cold noses nuzzling into the hay, drifting off, the silent stars going by. Thank you. If you enjoyed.
Yeah.
So thank you, everybody, for that. That's in the other section of functional families. And I'm really pleased to announce and invite my fellow Unsolicited Press author, Rosalia Scalia. She is out of Maryland, right?
Yes.
Yes. Just published a wonderful collection, Stumbling Toward Grace. And there you are. Beautiful. And so, Rosalia, without further ado, please take it away.
Hello, everyone. First, I am deeply grateful to all of you for coming tonight. I know that Tuesday nights might not seem like literary nights, but for some of us writers, every night is literary night. But I do appreciate your being here. It's going to be very hard to follow Taylor here with his wonderful alternative world of Blitzen and the elf. And my stories are not as light as that is, but I will, I'm not going to read all of one story. I'm going to read snippets of a couple of stories. I'm going to read a portion of the title story, Stumbling Toward Grace. And this, I used to work at University of Maryland News Bureau, and part of my job was to attend lectures and then report on them for the News Bureau that did a lot of things like publish the employee newsletter. And I attended a lecture called The Changing Faces of AIDS at the School of Medicine. And instead of coming home and coming back to the office to write about the lecture that I attended, I actually wrote the story that was inspired by the lecture, emailed it to myself at home, and then wrote the story I was supposed to report on. And that is this story, which I will read a portion of. Stumbling toward grace. It was during a particularly nasty ice storm in the winter of 2009 that brought Baltimore to a standstill when Adolf Ott realized at age 87 that he missed his daughter Polly more deeply than he wanted to admit to anyone. For a brief moment, as he trudged through the snow and sleet, walking in tracks left by the salt trucks, he imagined her walking with him, steadying him under his elbow so he wouldn't fall. She visited him on Sundays with her family. Then, remembering her family and considering what they must look like, he shook the image from his mind. He'd never been the kind of man who leaned on a woman, no matter the circumstance, and Polly had made her choice. She married the black man against his wishes, without his approval or blessing. Not wanting to fall, Adolf trod carefully, avoiding shiny surfaces that could be ice. Walking the 6 blocks to the church took longer than usual in the snow, even with his rubber-skidded boots. But he slowly moved forward, leaning on the sides of parked cars to steady himself. The snow's coldness bit through his gloves, and his fingers felt numb. The effort winded him. He avoided sidewalks that his neighbors had not yet cleared, and although Father Mark assured him that the furnace would be fine and urged him to stay home until things melted more, Adolf knew the furnace needed him. He considered it his furnace, and he took pride in keeping it as fine-tuned as a Stradivarius. For 22 years, ever since he retired, he maintained the church's heating and air conditioning systems. Thanks to his precision and keen dedication to detail, St. Elizabeth's Church hadn't experienced a day without either heat or air conditioning. 2 blocks from his Montfort Avenue house and 3 blocks from the church, he heard a gang of children. They shouted and squealed with laughter. Their voices were strong and vibrant, echoing along the narrow streets and breaking the silence imposed by the storm. Then he spotted them bundled in bright jackets, hats, and gloves, carrying shovels, brooms, and pickaxes, while pulling a large bag of salt in a wooden wagon. 7 or 8 kids knocked on every door along Montfort, asking residents if they wanted their sidewalks cleared for a price. Enterprising bunch. With their faces obscured by colorful scarves and hats, the kids appeared giddy from the snow day. When he noticed they were black, his mood soured, probably cruising houses to rob them later. Go back home, he shouted to them. Nobody wants you here. They faced him. Their smiles were gone from their faces. Go on, go back home. Nobody wants you here, he repeated. Speak for yourself, old man, a gravelly voice shouted at him from behind one of the storm doors. Adolf knew it belonged to Mookie, a jigaboo-loving troll if he ever knew one. You know these neighborhood kids if you weren't so damn cantankerous and ornery all the time. If you get robbed, you'll know why. Don't say I didn't warn you, he yelled back. The kids stared at him. The whites of their eyes matched the icy snow covering the streets. We want to know if you want your sidewalk cleared, said the oldest child, who couldn't be more than 10. We're providing a service, one of the bigger ones said. He flashed Adolf a wide, gap-toothed smile. His teeth were larger than his face. Spit in the air and it falls in your eyes, Adolf, Mookie shouted when she handed them each $1. When you all finish clearing my sidewalks and steps, I'll double that, she told the kids. Now, how many are you? 7? You all like hot chocolate? When you're all done, come on in for hot chocolate. The kids shouted at once, a cacophony singing, hot chocolate, hot chocolate. Annoyed, Adolf stopped and watched Mookie with the little jigaboos. One or two of them were already working to clear the icy snow with the pick. A few others smiled, their teeth shined like high beams. Y'all be careful now, she said, smiling back at them like an idiot. Her stupidity infuriated him. What did she know anyway? Nothing but a bar-owning woman her whole life, used to interacting with riffraff. He thrust his foot forward into the icy snow and moved step by careful step. He hoped that Mookie's foolishness would come back to haunt her just so he could say, "I told you so." He shook his head. "Mookie, you're a damn fool," he shouted. "Maybe so, Adolf, but you ain't exactly bucking for sainthood no matter how much time you spend up at that church," Mookie called back. "Maybe these could be your grands for all you know." She laughed as she closed her door. Adolf paused, looked closely at the children. He examined their faces for a family resemblance and decided that Mookie enjoyed tormenting him, as if he already didn't struggle with enough torment. But Mookie invoked Polly and her family, something he didn't consider a coincidence, and it forced him to wonder about Polly's kids as he walked on toward the church. What were they like? He couldn't help being curious. So Adolf goes on and does meet with his daughter, and that's the as the rest of the story unfolds, he realizes what he's actually lost. The second story is called Picking Chicoria. That's how it's said in English, but in Italian Americans pronounce it as Giardia. Giardia. It means chicory. And in this story, a lot of Italian Americans and a lot of Italian expats in other countries actually do go foraging for chicory. So in this story, Picking Giardia, we're in Baltimore's Little Italy. The last place Connie Sessa wanted to be was sitting in the passenger seat of her father's Dodge Dart, an old vehicle with faded green finish, a missing muffler, and dents from his bumper car driving style. The engine coughed and sputtered before it turned over, and when it finally rumbled to life, shattering the Sunday afternoon silence with its roar, he shifted into gear and pulled away. Through the window, Connie glared at her mother. Still in the nightgown with her gray and curly hair tied in a loose ponytail, her mother smiled and waved from the window of their Little Italy row home. "Fa attenzione, pay attention," her mother had said as she handed Connie, who was 13 years old, 2 large kitchen knives wrapped in butcher paper and 3 folded supermarket bags, which the girl tucked into the car's glove compartment. Cross and sleepy, Connie hadn't wanted to fa attenzione. She watched a dozen gray and white pigeons strut around the pile of breadcrumbs. As they pecked at the crumbs, their necks jutted in and out. She wondered if she would be able to get close enough to put salt on their tails. Would they be able to fly? Her father had told her that salt disables their wings. She spent countless hours as a child with a salt shaker in hand, chasing starlings and pigeons and trying to get close enough to sprinkle salt on their tails. Seagulls competed for the crumb pile. Their huge wings swooshed away the pigeons, flapping as they rose and fell from the pavement. The sun, barely risen over the rooftops of Baltimore's soldier-like homes, cast a gold sheen on the car's torn green seats. The church's bells had not yet tolled their melodic summons to the morning mass. Connie yawned, wondering what would actually happen next time if she refused to go foraging with her father on Sunday mornings. She much preferred sleeping for another hour or playing with her furry black cat before having to put on a lacy Sunday dress for church than picking Giardia or chicory. She had put on her worst clothes, jeans with holes in the knees, ripped tennis shoes, and an old worn t-shirt so as not to ruin her good ones. She had set her head on the window and shut her eyes. "Eddie, you no look at Eddie," her father, smoothing his cap, said. "Wake up." Embarrassed and annoyed, she frowned at his black knee-high socks on his sandaled feet. She wished he would dress as if he had been here since he was 20, she thought. It was the 70s already. He could at least lose the black knee-highs when he wore sandals and wear regular shorts instead of those baggy things he called half a pants. Her father pointed the car toward Lombard Street away from the rising sun and pressed his sock and sandaled toes onto the gas. She prayed no one would be at the fort to notice them, especially not Tony Gardoni, who made her heart beat faster than her grandfather's sewing machine, not her cousin Rosa or Uncle Joe, who was her father's brother. They had the same bad taste in fashion that made them look like matching bookends, and especially not anyone from her school, the normal people who'd go to the fort to explore its history instead of its foliage. With her whole heart, she wished she could transport herself out of the car. Her father's rotund body barely squeezed into his plaid shorts, and a white tank undershirt revealed rolls of fat around his shoulders and back. His cap hid the ever-widening bald spot on the top of his head, and a big mustache, looking like a tarantula hanging above his lip, gave him the appearance of a pudgy bandit on vacation. She hadn't been the only one to think so either. The salesman at a jewelry store must have fingered him for a bandit too. Why else would the man glare at them, follow them around the shop, and watch their every move when Pop had taken her and her sisters there to get presents for their mother's birthday? The man looked surprised when her father paid for a pair of diamond and pearl earrings with the wad of cash. Although he'd been in America long before Connie was born, to her, he still looked and acted as if he were fresh from the old country, as he called it. Some things just don't change regardless of geography. Like back atop a mountainside in Sicily, the same routine dominated Sundays. Pick Giardia, go to church, and eat dinner at noon. In Baltimore, the Giardia picking season started in May and ended in August. The only thing that changed every Sunday was the place. Last Sunday, they had gone to the Greenmount Avenue Cemetery, an expansive place in the middle of the city and where most of the famous Baltimoreans were buried, to pick stalks with purple blue flowers. They had spotted heartthrob Tony, his mother, and his elderly aunt there, already bent over the stalks growing along the graveyard section boundaries. They had been cutting away at them like migrant workers earning pennies per pound. Tony's aunt had twisted the skirt of her dress into a knot so that it formed a makeshift basket. Knife in hand and stooped over the plants, she cut the stalks and dumped them into her dress. Connie's face had flushed when Tony spotted her. She imagined running into him in a million different places, but not while picking Giardia. She turned her face, red from embarrassment, away from him, who also looked mortified, as if he wanted to shrink into the size of a gnat. She had understood perfectly. She had raised her knife a little higher before she brought it down on the clump of Giardia and winked at him. She rolled her eyes toward her father. Tony had raised his eyebrows at her in return and pointed his chin at his mother and his sister. She got it. Neither of them wanted to be there, and neither of them had a choice about it. He smiled and her heart stopped. She was certain that Tony, like herself, had probably visited a myriad of places where wild grasses grew on the quest for Giardia against his wishes. She and her father had visited cemeteries, parks, hospitals, college campuses, elementary and high school grounds, and other places he'd heard about through the mysterious network that also sent other foragers to the same places. Each week they had seen the same faces at various sites, each competing for their ever dwindling stalks. And then her mother had heard a whisper about the fort, supposedly filled with Giardia in spots that dogs couldn't easily reach, and as yet exploited by regular foragers. Turning the car onto Fort Avenue, her father drove straight toward the fort. This morning, they were pioneering new territory that was safe from dog walkers and the ruinous peeing dogs. Connie could list about 100 things she preferred to do, and at least Tony wouldn't be there. She sighed. She dreaded new territories. They always made her nervous about running into her friends and their parents, doing normal things like walking around and not picking Giardia and not foraging for food. And then the last story I will read is a story that is actually one of my favorites. Writers like to play what if, and there's a story in the Bible where Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, and I kind of wondered, what if Lazarus did not want to come back? So it's called Lazarus Died Twice. Before, I didn't think about things. I didn't gaze at the sky wondering where exactly Elohim lived beyond the ceiling of the stars. I didn't study the earth beneath my feet to explore what lay below. I didn't consider the ants, the worms, the beetles, or the swarms beneath the limbs of trees, the bees, the wasps, and the flies, and the hordes of winged insects. I didn't consider the network of roots beneath the trees or what allowed the olive and palm trees, wheat and beans and fruits and vegetables and figs and dates to spring up from the earth. Now, of course, I've seen what Elohim's breath created all, down to the smallest rock and stone. I've seen how easy it was to notice every grain of sand at every beach in the world. And yes, I saw the entire world from far above, unimaginable distances, even from the moon. I can talk about what happened now, but for a long time I told no one about what happened to me in the 4 days before Yeshua called me back. Ironically, no one asked me what it felt like to be dead. They all wanted to know what it felt like to be resurrected. And I always told everyone that it felt like waking up from a deep sleep. In reality, it felt horrible, as if my essence had been shrunken and forced back into this body that meant nothing to me the moment I left it. I looked down and, shocked at how ugly that body looked, almost failed to recognize myself. Before falling ill, I supported 2 sisters, Mary and Martha. I danced and drank wine with my friends. I gave my heart to loves, aching and longing for the men who dared to love me back in secret, lest we come to bad ends. I always kept that part of me hidden from everyone, including Martha and Mary, because I wanted to avoid being stoned to death or murdered in some bloody way. If only we had known then that the ends would have been so pleasant. Despite the desires of my heart, considered sinful, I kept holy the Sabbath, recited the Shabbos prayers, and loved Elohim. I lived an acceptable, mundane life, although I admit I could have worked harder to find suitable matches for Mary and Martha. Separating them would have been difficult since they acted as if they were joined at the hip since our parents died. I prayed to Elohim, whispered the Kaddish, Hayeni, Hayeni, and recited the Passover passages. After Yeshua called me back, every night and every day was different from the rest. Everything changed. I wept more in this dusty world than I did in all the years before I died. Lazarus, would it crack your face to smile for once? Martha said, soon after my return, kissing my cheeks, squeezing my hands, and then squeezing me in a hug so fierce I felt my eyes would pop out of my head. We're so happy you're breathing and alive, Mary said at that time, bringing me plates of figs and dates. She worked hard at keeping an endless succession of foods for me to eat, saying, we're so happy you're back. She touched my arms and hands and face in utter disbelief that my chest continued to rise and fall with each breath. She affectionately pulled my hair and pinched my nose and my cheeks as if I were a child instead of a grown man. Before I died, Mary and Martha treated me like a king. They showed no concern that no one would hire me after my return. After Yeshua called me back, potential employers acted too frightened to hire me, and my sisters treated me like a demigod, permitting me to do nothing useful or helpful. They accepted an endless supply of foods and gifts from the people to pay homage to Yeshua's miracle that defined me. I wept uncontrollably, oppressed by the happiness radiating from their faces. With my face buried into my arms, I longed with my whole being to return to Elohim. When I closed my eyes and imagined that perfect place beyond the stars, beyond the sun, beyond the moon, beyond the dark tunnel filled with warmth and love, and beyond the beautiful bright light of love who welcomed me home, I felt Elohim's unconditional love wash over me again. In that other ethereal place, I learned what it seemed that I had already known and somehow forgotten, that every grain of sand glowed with life, every rock and stone vibrated with life, and then this dusty blue earth quivered and trembled with Elohim's breath. In that perfect place, our parents and their parents welcomed me with love and joy that no words could describe. It seemed that I only just arrived before Elohim told me, with words that came into my being that I had to return to earth. And I fought. I begged Elohim not to send me back. I refused. I argued. I only just arrived and didn't want to return. I couldn't bear being away from Elohim's presence and the deep unconditional love that enveloped me while I was there. Lazarus, you have work to do, Elohim said. No, I won't go back. You can't show me this and then try to send me back. So that's the end of this.
Great reading, Rosalia.
Thank you all for listening.